Well, good afternoon, and thanks for joining us for today's second event this afternoon. This event is Mobile Inventory, Barcoding Considerations for Cloud and On-Prem. My name is Steve, and I'll be your host today. I think most of you have joined us in the series already, but I'll just review a couple things quickly, and then we'll get to the exciting part of our presentation. First, if you do have questions during the presentation today, please just open your control panel and type in your questions in the questions pane, hit send, and then at the end of today's webinar, we'll read your questions and answer them as best we can, but we'll answer anything that you submit. Very happy to be joined by Sherry Paul today. Sherry's the Global Manager of Solution Consulting at our partner, RF Smart. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about what RF Smart does, but I think this is very a topical session for anyone who has inventory in their business. This is a huge concern, controlling, automating that inventory, generally mobility in your company. So we'll talk a little bit more about why we work so closely with RF Smart and why they do such a great job. But first, I'll introduce Terillium. I'll do this quickly because I know all of you have probably heard this before. We implement ERP. That's what we do at Terillium. We focus in a few different products, which we have shown 2 of them so far in this series. JD Edwards will be tomorrow morning. These ERP implementations are, hard to think about getting started. They're also hard to do. We're very proud of the fact that we've won many awards for our implementations, and that's what we focus on is customer success, customer references. We think that we have a methodology and really a group of grade A consultants that really know their stuff that can deliver very successful ERP projects. So that's what we pride ourselves on. We have about 170 of those excellent full-time employees across the United States with a lot of experience in your industry and with our software who combined to produce those successful references. We started this series because thinking about a new ERP project is difficult. It's a journey. We thought this would be a good way to kickstart it. Take a look at a few different solutions, hear from experts in how to select the right solution, how to effectively run an ERP project, and hear from some thought leaders like RF Smart in the mobility industry about how to start to think about really getting some value out of an ERP implementation by automating a lot of your manual processes. And that's what we'll hear about today. Then, as we mentioned, tomorrow morning at 11 Eastern, we'll be showing the JD Edwards on-premise product. And capping it off tomorrow afternoon, our president will talk about the factors for success in an ERP project. Those things are hard. They can be risky. These are things that Terillium as a company and our president personally have seen over 20 plus years that will lead to your success in an ERP project. So I highly encourage you to attend that. Now I'll turn the presentation over to Sherry, and I just wanted to say that, RF Smart, Sherry's company, has been a long-time partner of Terillium. Our customers have always been very happy with the results that RF Smart delivers, but we bring RF Smart to this series because they're truly experts in mobility, and especially mobility as it relates to inventory, warehouse mobility, which is something that people really start to think about when they think about this new system. Really, in a nutshell, how are we going to automate? How are we going to control? How are we going to make sure that this system delivers some return on our investment? And when it comes to all of those things, RF Smart is the real expert in this industry. So we're really happy to have them with us, and especially Sherry, who leads their entire group of presentation professionals. So we're looking forward to what Sherry has to share with us today. So Sherry, welcome to the webinar. We'll be excited to see what you have to present here.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, there we go. All right, thanks a lot, Steve. To start out with what we're going to be talking about, Steve covered some of this, but the RF Smart is a product that is a full solution for mobility and data collection. And maybe you have this today or something you've seen before, but basically it's being able to use a handheld device that you can scan barcodes with every time you're doing anything with inventory. Just to give you the background of it, towards the end, I am going to do a demonstration to actually show you a little bit of our product in the NetSuite platform, and you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. But we've been providing mobility for a long time. We'll talk about that. Then we're going to talk about some top cloud considerations, on-prem versus cloud, and what considerations you want to make sure that you're thinking of. And then we're going to do a little demonstration, so you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about from a mobility standpoint. RF Smart is actually the brand. Our company name is ICS, but we're commonly known by RF Smart. We started as a company actually doing implementing software as well by our founder back in the early 80s. And we concentrated on J.D. Edwards and a small patch in the southeast. And in about the beginning of the 90s, this ability to be able to walk around with mobile devices wirelessly and be hooked up to your ERP system became reality, and customers rose their hand and said, we want to be able to do this. Can you help us with the product for J.D. Edwards? So we did exactly that, and then we gradually turned into a products company. So today, RF Smart, ICS RF Smart is a products company, and our products are all warehouse manufacturing focused to improve your business processes in those areas. We are a global company with, you can see we have many offices here in the U.S. as well as UK, Germany, Australia. We just released today a new number for our NetSuite customer base is 500, so that 850 customers in 33 countries is growing rapidly by the day. But remember that that includes customers that have been with us since as long as the early 90s. So we have a very strong customer base. We get very high customer satisfaction ratings, and you'll see that I'm going to be showing our out-of-the-box transactions because most of our customers are using the out-of-the-box transactions with maybe a little configuration or possibly some modification. We know what the software is because we're not building it from scratch. It's out of the box, ready to use, and therefore we can support customers very easily knowing what their foundation is. We have done over 2,000 warehouse implementations. Many people that are in our company and that would be doing implementations for our customers have actually been employed in the warehouse and have worked manufacturing. So there's a lot of real life experience that we bring to the table. And as I said, all of our products are out of the box, purpose built. And again, what that means is that with RF Smart, you could say I need to do PO receiving and put away and inventory transfer and counting, and I want to do sales order picking and packing. All of those would be a workflow that we would have purpose built already at a best practice design. And basically, if you were good to go with that, if there were no modifications in your ERP, it would literally be training on how to use them, getting the infrastructure in and the hardware, getting barcodes on items, and you would be ready to go with an implementation. So it's just kind of like an ERP where you go into an ERP and you do your configurations. You certainly don't write it from scratch. But it's on par with an ERP implementation. I'd say it's probably about an eighth of that effort. There's only certain areas that processes that would be automated with a product like RF Smart. So our product's history, I was talking about how initially we released the RF Smart product very early in 1992. Through the years, we've made some great improvements in the product just as the technology became more widely available, widely used, and better technologies. And today, you can see that we have solutions for JD Edwards, Dynamics AX, or D365, which is the Microsoft ERP software. It can be on-prem or cloud-based, or even a hybrid approach. NetSuite, and we've been doing that since 2013, so that's pretty. Actually, that number now should say 500 plus NetSuite customers, and then Oracle Cloud SCM. So that's the Oracle Cloud supply chain product that's out there. We have mobility products that integrate to all of these different ERPs. The reason that people look to companies bring on mobility projects is to improve inventory accuracy, shipping accuracy, worker productivity, supply chain visibility, most of those things that once you implement an ERP and you're trying to do everything manually, the common pains we hear is I'm trying to ship something out, but they haven't completed the work order yet, so I don't actually have the inventory there. And it's because there's a day's worth of inventory of work order tickets that don't get input until the end of the day. Or, I don't really know how much labor is being spent because we have the means for people to record their actual start and stop times. We have to do wall-to-wall physical inventories because our inventory accuracy is so poor, and we'd like to get to where we're just doing cycle counts on a regular basis and get our accountants to agree that we can go into a cycle count program instead of a full stock take program. Those are the kinds of problems and pains that we can solve by enabling those workers that are out there with the inventory to be able to actually scan a barcode and do the transactions they're physically performing, actually transact those in the ERP by simply scanning barcodes. So you can imagine if you're looking at a total manual state, and then you put a mobile device in everyone's hand, and when they move inventory, they can just simply scan a barcode to record where they've moved it, where they've shipped it, where they've put it, even when they've inspected it. That's going to have all real-time implications for your ERP. And as you know, as you're making ERP selections, there's great choices out there. All the ERPs do the core fundamentals, and then they have their own they all have their own kind of nice features within them. But trying to feed an ERP system with manual entry, especially if you want to get very discrete in your locators or you want to do a lot of serial control, is almost impossible to keep up with it accurately unless you're doing barcode scanning. So as I was explaining, here's where you would use barcode scanning. And maybe if anybody was in the dark on, I'm not sure what she means by barcode scanning, this is actually painting the picture a little bit more. So we're using devices. These are some example devices where, we do have some specifications that'll be different for the different platforms. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But basically, we can help. RF Smart can assist with helping you select the hardware for your environments, the specific hardware for your environments, all the way down to what are the best printers and what labels do you need, what labels would work, maybe if you have something that's hard to adhere to, or that you need to use a wire, to put it on the product. We can work with you on all those solutions. So where this is going to be used, as I was talking about, is any of those touch points for inventory. So when I bring inventory in, what if I could receive it right at the receiving dock? And that receiving dock touch point it actually becomes an entry point for data. And, there again, timeliness, validity, all that is taken care of when you give that to, empower that worker on the receiving dock to actually do the entry back into the ERP. And you'll see that we do a lot of validation during that process. So we're going to make sure the data is right before it actually gets sent for processing as well. And then the inventory, your fulfillment, your production. Fulfillment would be transfer orders, sales orders, whatever, even like a replenishment has a fulfillment side to it. And then also in manufacturing, you might want to record issues of components. You might want to record labor with an easy scan of an employee ID and a work order number or a production order number. You may want to issue components. Any of that, we're going to have different transactions in the different ERPs that cover that. So here's some real customer return on investment. I think this is really compelling for us to have from our customers, right from our customer mouths, that have said this is what we are realizing in return on investment. Many times, even when we're presenting to a customer or prospect, many times just looking at the effort it takes them to count their inventory, that can get the return on investment. But there's other ways as well. So an 88% increase in productivity, 65% less time receiving and counting, that is very significant. Shipment errors decreasing by 50%. So imagine if those shipping errors were getting a fine every time something was shipped incorrectly. That would quickly add up into savings. And then, of course, your cost of your missed shipment calculation could help you get some return if you're really up to that high of missed shipments. And then doubling the number of picked orders. So many times also with mobility, or maybe even in your ERP selection, your company is growing and you're facing that, and you're hoping to grow without necessarily adding a lot of new employees, wanting to be able to do more with the same level of employees. Definitely, if you bring in mobile automation into your environments, it is going to let you, give you the means to be able to do more with the same number of people, or potentially even let some of those people go do other things in the organization and maybe reduce the amount of pickers or packers that are needed. So doubling the number of picking orders, this company can grow by more than half and be able to still handle the same number of orders per day. All right, so that's kind of the why people use mobility and what mobility looks like. We talked about the real return on investments, very compelling. And then we'll talk about, since we're doing an ERP consideration, we'll talk a little bit about some of this. So from the ERP, not necessarily following the PowerPoint at this point, but just going to talk a little bit about the ERP selections that you might be looking at. Some of the ERPs will have an inherent mobility that they're offering. Many of them, they're rather immature products, so they haven't necessarily been around and widely used. And most of them are, the ERP vendor's core competency is not mobility. So understanding how good a user interface has to be, the label printing, the hardware, the whole piece of automation. Yet they might have something they could show you that would allow you to scan a barcode and move a piece of inventory. I really advise you to look at those inherent RF offerings and make sure that they're going to be robust enough for what you want to do, because we can definitely add value. RF Smart, that's our core competency, is mobile data capture and everything that goes with that. And so for us, that'll be the number one piece of the project. And we'll make sure that when we leave there, you're working in the most efficient way possible by using RF Smart, where if you use your inherent RF, you potentially have to find another service provider to help you implement that, because unless you have expertise in-house on wireless infrastructure, labeling, products, barcode symbologies, so much to consider out there. So that's just one thing I would suggest, is that some of the ERPs will require a third party for mobility. Some of them will claim to have an inherent, and they do have an inherent, but if it's really important to you, if you use data collection before you make the change, I would, vet that product out and make sure it's going to add the value that you need. So those are on-prem or cloud. What we're going to talk about now is some cloud considerations. So what to consider when you're looking at buying, mobility products. What do you want to look for when it's a cloud-based? It would be almost any third party that you might buy in cloud-based. So one thing that you want to know is when are you going to schedule your product releases? How are they going to be scheduled in sync with the releases that are going to be sent down from my cloud provider? How are you going to test? How soon do you get that testing data, that testing environment, so that you can bring your product up to the next product release before the actual ERP cloud partner pushes down some new releases? Also, you want to understand how tied together the mobility is to the ERP. You want to make sure that when there's an update that comes from the cloud, the ERP, that it doesn't break any mobile customizations you might have out there. And some of that will just determine on the architecture and how that's architected, and how much of an impact that might have. And then, the importance of testing. So if you're going with cloud, this is a little new environment, having things, having your systems updated, kind of pushed down from the vendors. And we would suggest to make sure that in your testing plans, that you make sure that you also you test your mobility, to make sure that the new release that's coming from the cloud is not going to affect your people out there on the floor that are doing their execution every day on a handheld device. Also, cloud security. So you want to, one thing to consider, and something that we've been actually concentrating on here with some new regulation out there in the UK, is for the security. So when you have a mobile, depending on the architecture, when you're on a mobile device, you may actually be right in the software, like with NetSuite. We're built inside of NetSuite, so it's just like a NetSuite user. Although we can have token users. I'll talk about that a little bit. But in some of our other ERPs, it's actually on a separate server. So you just, but in all of it, we do not do anything with any credit card information, any employee information, anything that might be considered secure and sensitive information. Since we don't pull any of that down from the ERP, we tend to pass all the FDA, any type of approval that we have to out there, because we're never affecting any of that secure data. So, you want to leverage your ERP's authentication if you can. Avoid storing passwords or personal info inside of the actual, third-party mobility product. And you want to, there's some Wi-Fi security as well, and we can work on tying down the Wi-Fi security even further with the mobile data collection. And there's sorry about that. I'm going to go to one more slide here. Other considerations are your devices. So with ICS Smart, we have a list that we could provide you of all this approved devices by ERP. But some things to consider in today, things are changing a bit. So Windows is out. It's deprecated. So Microsoft Windows won't be on any of the devices. And most of the vendors are going towards Android. So that's just the reality of what we have out there. And the hardware vendors today really have now boiled to two. We have Zebra and Honeywell. And they are, going towards Android. Now we do, we also see some iOS requirements, which we can accommodate for the most part. But Android is the way the mobile data collection devices are going, definitely those handhelds or personal computers that you're holding. We have printing in printer language. So when you're, using on-prem, you're going to have print servers that are, with your ERP system. When you're doing the cloud, there's a little bit more to getting that local print with a cloud request. So you want to make sure and understand how barcode printing can work and how you can have potential local printing. And you do want to, we said, or as I mentioned, we do have recommended devices. And if you're looking at any other vendor, I would definitely make sure that you're looking at correct devices to use for those applications. Okay, so other things to consider in the integration. So here's an example of one thing to consider from NetSuite perspective. Now, I could have gone through all of the ERPs. We could have done this kind of from that view, but time was a little bit limited. So I'll just show you, like, if you were looking at NetSuite, here are the different options that you could have for an integrated solution. So RF Smart is an integrated solution built inside of NetSuite for NetSuite. So that is here, the entire solution resides on the Suite Cloud platform, and all components are within the built for NetSuite. And that's one way to do integrations with NetSuite. Now, another way would be an integrated app where the majority of it resides in NetSuite, but some of it is separated into potentially its own data, its own server. That's the hybrid approach, or I'm sorry, I went backwards here, hybrid. So there's where you have a mix of components, some in the cloud, some that are either on the devices or on site, and then you get the completely integrated. So this really is kind of our Oracle Cloud and JD Edwards and Microsoft. That's how we deploy for those on-prem and the Oracle Cloud. Our solution is out in the cloud, but we are not integrated directly into Oracle Cloud. We're integrated using web services. So there is a RF Smart server, be it in the cloud or be it on-prem, and then we use web services to go and actually do the validation and the updates. So there's different configurations. I think any mobile data collection vendor that you talk to would have their own set of different options on how, what your options are for those mobile data collection servers. Do you want that integration all in your ERP? There's advantages and disadvantages depending on the ERP. Do you want it just a standalone server so that it's all off of the ERP and just integrated in, or do you want a little bit of both? All right, so some other considerations to look for, and this is something that we have worked on and really added value over the years in JD Edwards, Microsoft AX, and now moving into NetSuite and Oracle Cloud, is to actually add enhancements to like the base distribution. So RF Smart's not a WMS. We are the mobile data capture side, automated data collection, barcoding, whatever you call it, that uses the distribution side, warehouse distribution side of the ERP systems. Now, we might also have, like in JD Edwards' example, they have a WMS system. We also integrate to that from an execution side. So it's going to say, actually an AX as well. The ERP system is going to churn away and figure out where should I put this, where should I pick this, create a request, and then somebody executes against that. We have, if you are using the WMS, we can be used as well because we have the transactions to match those as well. But one nice spot that we have in all the ERPs is we're adding value to these transactions. So here's an example. If I want to do an item transfer, all the ERPs have an item transfer of some sort somewhere that you're going to do in a transaction. We're extending that to the handheld. However, you might not just want to scan one item and then scan the location and then come back and scan another item and scan the location. You might want to be able to scan multiple items and then move them to either one location or to all locations. Or you may want to just scan everything in a location, like a bulk move, to another location. So the same transactions in the background of the ERP are being performed. We're adding at the user interface that efficiency of being able to do these in multiples at a time. We have a dynamic work order picking, for example, that will allow a process that will walk a worker through all the components on a pick list that need to be picked for a work order, and allow them to stage it to a location or bin that's near the work order or near the work center, so that later on it can be consumed. That if anybody's ever heard the black hole of work in process, that is a pain point that we're trying to alleviate there, is that we're going to let you stage it, we're going to commit it to the staged location so nobody else can use it, and then you can backflush it or consume it later on when you're really ready to call it work in process versus inventory. So those are the things that, you don't necessarily just want your mobile data collection solution to just mimic every transaction in your ERP. You actually want them in such a way that they're improving the productivity of those people that are, on the floor every day moving the inventory around and trying to record it as they do their daily job. Okay, so let's see mobility in action. All right, I'm not going to give a whole big demonstration here, but this is our NetSuite product. I thought it would be a good one to show. Any of the other products would look very, very similar. There are some things in NetSuite were built inside of NetSuite that we, like the image is something that we do have inside of NetSuite that we might not, for instance, in JD Edwards have that initially. So let's go ahead. I'm going to do two transactions. So we're going to do a purchase order receipt, and it'll give you the idea of what it would look like from a worker standpoint to be out in the warehouse and be receiving a PO. So what I'm going to do here is come into my menu. This is the ICS Smart menu. Usually it's very roles-based, so there's only a few transactions for that worker. You come in here and they would select their purchase order receipt. All these you'll see default data as I go. That's all set up in preferences. You don't want this worker on the device to be diverted their attention from what they're really supposed to be doing, which is receiving the PO. So we want to make this as quick and as easy for this worker to do. So here, they're at the receiving dock. Maybe they pulled a packing slip. Let's say there is no barcode on the incoming. Well, I don't want to have to stop and go look that up in NetSuite or my ERP. I want to be able to find a way to easily go in, sort by my vendor, find that the PO is 094 because I can see that on my packing slip, and boom, it starts the put away. The receiving, and it shows me exactly what's on that PO. So right now, literally, I do not need any paper in my hand. This is what's supposed to be on the PO. I do have this set up to go into a receiving location so that I can put it away later. Those are different setups, just an example. So now I can scan my item number. I can go ahead and it shows a nice image, calculator. These are the types of things when I was saying look at your inherent if they're offering a mobile data capture. Does it have things like the ability to calculate, the ability to print labels anywhere, a nice button to do complete, anything to help the user at this point, and make sure that all those features that are required to have a really good, solid mobile data collection application are in place. I'm going to go ahead, notice how it goes to green there, so that's some great visuals for the user. It'd go to yellow if I don't receive everything, so if I receive partial, notice how it's yellow there. And that worker now knows that they're not done. Well, maybe they missed a box, and so they're like, oh yeah, I do have 50 more of these, so I'm going to go ahead and put the other 50 away. And then I submit it. Now that updates the ERP. That was looking at the data, validating the data right from NetSuite or any other ERP. This happens to be the purchase order that I just received, and now you can see the receipt quantity. So it's as if you did the same transaction inside of NetSuite. All right, well, I guess that is I just wanted to do a quick demonstration here to make sure that you understood what I was talking about when I was talking about mobile data collection. And that is the content that I have for today. We can open up for questions and answers at this point. Steve, are there any questions out there?
Sherry, I do have a couple of questions here, and I'll just remind everybody as we're talking, if you have any questions, go ahead and submit those. And I'll tell you what, I meant to launch a poll at the beginning of the webinar here that I didn't, but I think this might be kind of fun to see what your peers are doing. So let me launch a poll now. And as we do that, Sherry, I'll start to ask a couple of these questions, and maybe if anybody has any others, go ahead and submit those. The first question is, we have 2 warehouses in 2 different locations. Can you give us any inclination into the size of a project it would be to implement barcode scanning in our warehouses?
How big did they say they were, Steve?
Well, it just says 2 warehouses.
Okay.
So maybe,
all right. Well, of course,
yeah.
of course, that's a it depends answer, of course. But we have actually implemented in as little as 3 weeks. I'm telling you, that's a customer that had barcodes and had abandoned another software to come use us. So they were all set up from the logistics standpoint and infrastructure standpoint. And, you know, depending on if you're going to have a lot of modifications inside the ERP that we have to accommodate, then it may take 6 months. But usually it's about a 3-month. We can get it up and running in about 3 months, depending on, you know, if it's a small organization, if it's 2 users, that could be a 6-week project. And a lot of that is the infrastructure, right? So we have to get the wireless, you have to get devices, that sort of thing. But if you're pretty standard on the ERP, it's going to just be a matter of getting it tested and menus set up and having people start using it. Anything else?
Okay, great. Good. And I'll keep launching different polls here. Next question is, you know, all of our people have iPhones. Can we use iPhones as opposed to the handheld devices to collect data?
For the most part, yes. It will depend on it will depend on maybe on the ERP. I think across the board for RF Smart, we're able to support iPhones. The iPhone itself, though, is not really meant for this. First of all, you have to have a wraparound scanner because the camera is not a scanner. You might think it is because it'll read a QR code, but that does not make it a barcode scanner because there's symbologies in a barcode. So there's a little Linear Pro wraparound scanner you can get. Battery life is something to consider if you wanted to use those consumer grade devices. Can it withstand an 8-hour shift? Can it withstand a drop? The actual enterprise vendors that have industrial type devices, they do also have them now that are very close to the look and feel of, let's say, your smartphone. But they also have the industrial battery, the industrial cases, the barcode scanner built in. So it's up to you. It's something we can help you understand the pros and cons of and help you with your choice.
Okay, great. Well, that looks like the questions that were asked so far. So as I talk slowly here, I'll remind everybody, if you do have a question, submit that quickly and we'll answer it live here. Or if we don't quite catch you, we'd be happy to follow up one-on-one. But Sherry, I want to thank you for taking the time to contribute to the series here and present on mobility. Excellent presentation, and I think we all learned a ton from that, so thank you. And to all of the attendees, thank you for your time today. Hope this was valuable for you, and we'll look forward to seeing you again tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. as we present the J.D. Edwards solution.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for your time today. Bye now.